responsible, because like if we're asking them the questions, that they probably need to be prepared to make some research, not just to talk for the talk. So yeah, can imagine.
That's exactly right. So I think developers are more conscientious than recruiters are, because they like to be prepared, like to not say things speculatively, and actually have confidence in the argument and all those types of things. Whereas recruiters tend to just shoot from the mouth a bit. Be a little bit more prepared to just, I'll say this and see what happens. So there's different characters, right? Different characters, even though we occasionally get people who move from one to the other. And in fact, if we can get Ivan on today, he's an example of that. The person who's ex-developer turned into a recruiter. And I'm pretty certain there's recruiters that have gone into development, although right now I can't quite recall anybody who's actually made that journey. But yeah, have a think if you can. Anybody
I
you
know a
think
few
is actually
people. Yeah, a few people just moved to completely to software engineering and enjoying it.
Have they stuck with it though? It's all right, just like doing a course and doing it, but have they actually become professional software developers as a result of that transition? I'm not so sure. I think it's easier the other way to do it the other way, simply
It's easier.
because you might just need a mega network, and that will already sort half the problems out. Anyway, folks, we are live, everybody. Welcome to Brainfood Live on Air. It's bringing it to you. It is episode 199. Would you believe it? We're nearly at our second centenary. How'd you even call it? It's not a bicentenary, is it? Whatever it is, 200 episodes, nearly there, folks. So thank you all for joining us and joining us on this journey. It's obviously been 4 or 5 years since we've been doing this live stream. I hope you've been getting value from it. I've been getting messages from people sort of when I posted about the schedule this month. They're saying, yeah, I really look forward to ending my week with Brainfood Live. So if this is going to be the end of your week, so you can finish working at 3 or 4 in the afternoon, then great. This is how we want to do it. So listen, let's do some sound checks first of all. Make sure everyone can hear me okay. Folks on Crowdcast, if you can hear me okay, just let me know on the chat there whether the audio and the video is okay. So you should see me on one side of the screen and also Ala Pavlova on the other, and you should be able to hear us both. Let me know if that's the case. We are live streaming this, folks, everywhere, everywhere where I can put it. But most importantly on LinkedIn. So if you're watching this on the LinkedIn event, let me know on the comment there whether the audio and video is okay. I think generally speaking, those are the two biggest channels where we get, probably a couple hundred people sort of in total, probably a few hundred actually will end up watching it from there. So good stuff. All right, people can seemingly hear me from here, which is great. I love that someone's actually represented Datadog. I love it when an individual person signs up as an entire company, as if you have the right to do that. But okay, you're representing Datadog all the way through here. Okay, cool. Let's do a quick word to our sponsors. Thank you to our sponsors this week. Guess who it is? It is our friends at Code Signal. Do you know Code Signal, folks? They're one of the premier software technical testing platforms out there. I think they may be number one these days in terms of numbers of developers, numbers of tests that they're being used. Set up by a really cool guy from Armenia, Tigran Sloyan. I invited him to come on to do the sponsor message. However, he is in San Francisco and he can't do it. So it's up to me to deliver it. But if you are looking to hire software engineers, of course, you need to technically assess. I don't think anybody has a problem with that. Software engineers themselves would anticipate a test some way in the process. And let's not forget, these days with generative AI, ChatGPT, you can no longer send anybody an asynchronous DIY test and expect a result that you can trust. So you need to use a software platform these days. Companies like Code Signal, I think, are going to be in really, really good shape for that reason. For remote working, number one, and number two, to validate that the test is actually performed by the person who's doing it without the support of artificial intelligence. So anyway, I've just shared the link to Code Signal there. Go and check it out if you're hiring for software engineers and you're not using any testing or assessment software. Got to choose one of those. Okay, get into it. Okay, let's welcome Ala Pavlova back on the show. Ala, great to see you. It's always a pleasure. How have you been? What have you been up to?
Yeah, thank you so much. Also, a great pleasure. I was taking a short break, and super happy to come back on the shows and on the events. Yeah, my name is Ala. I'm based in Amsterdam. I'm a huge fan of everything that is happening in software engineers' life. I'm married to one. I have friends. I go to the developers conference. I give talks to developers. I ask them for feedback. So for me, this type of shows are so important that we can learn from each other. So excited.
Amazing. And we're going to be catching up in Berlin in a couple of months, aren't we? Because we are both going to the We Are Developers conference
Yay.
in July, I think. So
July. Yeah.
why don't you share the link in the chat stream there? Folks, I know most people who watch this are going to be recruiters, but and I'm a big evangelist for people going onto industry events. Definitely get yourself to recruitment events, of course. But you know what? Sometimes you need to get yourself to events from outside of our space. And particularly if you're recruiting for tech, definitely get involved with something like this. It's going to be, I don't know how many people. It's at the biggest developer conference in
Yeah.
Europe, I believe.
It's like 9,000 last year, I think it was. So it was really huge.
Yeah, so 9,000 people. I think Tim Berners-Lee is going to give the keynote. It's going to be great. Ala's going to be on stage doing something. I'm going to be doing a fireside chat also. Come and join us in Berlin. It's going to be great. Okay, let's get on with, actually, we should review the newsletter real quick. I'm not sure whether you had the chance to read it at all, but if you did, let's pick out a couple of things that you want to just quickly highlight and discuss.
Always. Yeah, if you think that's really catch my eye, one of them is, of course, dedicated to the topic that we have today, is about planned meta layoffs. It is something that's touched me a lot because you know people who work there, and then you receive the message from your friends, hey, there is an announcement of another bunch of layoffs, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be there. And I think this uncertainty that if you're going to be laid off, or like if it's going to happen with your friends, then you have to wait for it. It creates such a like unpleasant feeling for everyone. And I hear more and more in my network as well, that people who dream to work in the companies like Google, like Meta and Amazon, so they say, is it so that these companies are at the biggest risks compared to others? So probably I should not go to the top 5 companies anymore. So that's
Interesting reversal, right? Interesting reversal. I wonder whether developers have that feeling. We're definitely going to ask, because this show is going to be all about bringing developers on. We're going to ask them directly, like, has it changed your opinion as to these big, the FAANG companies? Previously, the ones that everyone wanted to join for the compensation, for the stock options, for the career development, for the cachet even. But has that cachet worn off? I mean, with all of these, like round after round of redundancies, and a sense, that maybe they're building a little bit in the past, when you've got younger companies where you can get a little bit more involved and what have you. So have they become more competitive compared to, previously Meta, Google, etc.? You wouldn't even be able to compete with them. They typically only compete with themselves. Anyway, I've just shared the link that Ala was referring to there. That's a really good blog post, by the way. I think that person was actually talking about not only the layoffs, but also the flattening of the Meta company structure, and the concept that actually even the managers, the engineering managers that are staying within the company, they're being told, very similar to Elon Musk in Twitter, they're being told, actually, you got to keep coding because we don't want anybody managing. So I wonder whether there's going to be kind of a shift in terms of what the managerial role is going to be. And again, something worth asking our developer friends about. Do you prefer to work with a manager that also codes, or is that a problem? Or do you prefer a completely hands-free manager and you do the coding? Because it seems that in the direction of travel is we're going to get more like contributor managers now going forward. Okay, give us a couple more, Ala.
Yeah, sure. One of the really, really interesting reads as well, who becomes an entrepreneur? So this is a really interesting read because I became an entrepreneur in 2015 and I didn't know anything about it. You just start and you just go with it. So I think this article is amazing in terms like the things that you have to think. For example, mental health issues run in the family, and this is kind of things that's like like looking back at your family, you're thinking like so is it something that you like a family trait also like being in the past of the entrepreneurships, like what like are you well rounded for this type of the jobs, so the background that you have to start to become the entrepreneur is very important. And we have to like I didn't know as well that there are different types of the entrepreneurs. So I also considered myself like as a generalist, like the someone who takes like a lot of things, but yeah, it's really interesting reads in terms of like giving some nice data, explaining the importance of being as a part of the community. Yeah, so just really, really, really recommend to read this one.
I really like this because it basically breaks down personas of entrepreneurs. So they did a lot of like meta studies on who was an entrepreneur and then try and figure out what their background was. And they just put like pretty broad brushes into terms of what it is. And there's some really fascinating ideas there. Like for instance, a common path to be an entrepreneur is someone who is a kind of a mature pro. So someone who basically multi-job, got to about 40 and thought, right, I got to be my own boss, but you've got lots of different sort of experiences that you can bring to an entrepreneurial path. I think that's quite common in recruitment. You know, if you set up a company by yourself, probably you're not doing that as the first thing you've ever done in recruiting, but maybe it's the third thing you've done in recruiting. You become an independent person. And then you have things like childhood trauma. Strangely enough, like someone who I think they did again a broad study of a famine, I think, and they found that actually people who had experience of childhood trauma of that type end up just having a sense of, look, I've lost everything already before. Therefore, their sense of risk tolerance is a lot higher because they've already experienced far worse in setting up a business. So there's that concept applied to it as well. And quite right, Bob. Yeah, 51. I think their number was 42.9 or something. So the average age for an entrepreneur is actually that sort of early 40s. But anyway, really worth a read. I think for two reasons. Number one, recruiters are often told to hire for entrepreneurial mindset. So can we use this if we're looking for candidates? We want an entrepreneurial mindset. Great. Perhaps we can use this as some sort of guide, or at least to help us shape some questions there. And secondly, hey, everyone needs to think about, or lots of us are thinking about, maybe it is time to set up your own business. In which case, some of these sort of categories, I think, will give you some inspiration. Okay, cool. Give us one more, Ala, before we get into this show.
The last one. So I haven't finished reading that yet. It's the one about the GPTs, our GPTs, an early look into the labor market impact potentially of the large language models. So this is like I believe that this is like a big research, right, from the university, and like it's a very recent one. I just wanted to thank you, Han, for providing that for us to read, because this is something like more in a way like reminds of the years when I did like my PhD, this kind of things. So it's inevitable that it's influencing in the market, but yeah, I'm very curious to learn like a little bit more about what this research has for us.
I didn't realize you did a PhD, Ala. So how come I never knew this? I never possibly didn't even read your CV ever.
Profile. Exactly.
What did you do your PhD in?
PhD in law. So yeah, I was
Really?
kind of fighting for the constitutional rights. So yeah.
Right, Dr. Alla Pavlova. Who would have thought? Crikey. Well, listen, I'm pleased we haven't lost you to the world of law. That would be a tragedy. But no, folks, this is actually a really interesting bit of research. I think a lot of people are already citing it. I do believe it's one of those things that we should download and take a look at. It's essentially trying to examine the types of work that they feel are highly exposed to generative AI. And what's very, very interesting for us is that from their estimation, they're looking at what a high barrier to entry jobs, completely counterintuitively, are actually the jobs that are most highly exposed. So I think we are at the risk of confusing, of reversing the confusion between AI and automation here. I remember when automation was coming in a couple of years ago, and everyone said, "Oh, that's the AI," and then we were all disappointed it was not speaking to us. Therefore, it must be all rubbish. I think we're at risk of reversing it here, in the sense that we think that this AI that we're now seeing is just automation. That's not a problem. Actually, it is a problem, because if you are in a knowledge-intensive job, and your job actually involves you doing loads of training and loads of education, etc., that's your primary value. Generative AI has you right in the crosshairs. So in other words, a doctor is in more higher risk of being disintermediated than a nurse. Why? Because the doctor's primary value is be able to analyze a case, diagnose it, and say, "Hey, here's what you should do." Nurse's job is to basically provide customer care for the candidate, but for the patient. Now you think about how generative AI can apply to either of those spaces. It's going to apply a lot more easily to the high knowledge, high barrier to entry job. We're about to flip what's important in society, folks. So this research is, I think, something everyone should read. It is an academic text, so it's not going to be one of these pop sci, easy readable stuff, but it is accessible enough if you want to just like grind through it. And of course, you can just copy and paste it and ask ChatGPT to summarize it for you if you wanted to. But I think when people talk about, "Oh, the research says this," it'll be referring to this paper. So make sure you have a hold of it and you can refer to it back in the past, in the future case. Okay. Let's get on with this chat. The topic of conversation today is tech layoffs and the tech labor market from the developer's point of view. Now, folks, all of us here, generally speaking, are recruiters. Most of us are anyway. A lot of us recruit in tech. We have had the conversation in amongst ourselves as to what's going on. We've seen the layoffs. We've seen candidates being laid off. We've kind of experienced it ourselves as job seekers and so on. But what are the developers themselves talking about? What are they thinking? How are they feeling? Is the doomering type of attitudes that recruiters have, is that reflected in what developers are actually feeling in the market? Because I think that voice hasn't been heard yet. So that's the purpose of today's show, and we're gonna dive into it in a sec. Okay, folks. By the way, Tom, I totally get it. There's basically a time zone snafu. I am actually going to blame just generally moving time. I don't feel responsible for this mistake at all. I did not make a mistake. Don't move the bloody hours. You know what? Why are you doing that? That's crazy. Stop doing it, world. Let's just keep to a single time, please. But anyway, yeah, that's why some people have this in the calendar about half an hour later or an hour later. Anyway, we've got people watching this in any case, so let's get on with it. Ask you a quick question. You are actually married to a software engineer, Ala. How have you kind of felt? What is the conversation different between tech recruiters when we talk about what the tech market is like compared to the conversations your husband is having, and what are you getting from him basically?
From him and from friends, because they all like we have a big chat where all the developers are, and I'm like a fox sitting and looking what they're discussing as well. To be honest, it's absolutely no panic. There are discussions like I'm gonna open my LinkedIn and I'm gonna look into people, into recruiters who reach out to me recently or like some time ago, and I'm gonna see what are the companies hiring right now. It feels like there is no stress in a way, more like I'm going to find something else. I'm going to look into to the market. It's different from what the recruiters having, because they know that the opportunities for them are quite limited, because if every company is reducing the number of people, the first people who are really suffer are the recruiters. So that's why we don't have this probably confidence that it's going to take like a few weeks or something to find something new. So the conversations, it's okay. I'm going to look into my network. And the second one is I'm probably not going to go to the same tier company, meaning so the companies that are also about to lay off same in the same situation.
Yeah. So overall, the sense is far calmer than the conversation we're having in recruiting, because basically we're kind of feeling, oh my God, all these companies are stopping to hire, our jobs are under pressure, etc. Developers seem to be, feeling generally okay. And actually the layoff track is really, really interesting. There's also a number of ones out there that are really quite worth keeping an eye on. I think overall VC-backed technology companies have let go something like 250,000 people, I think, over the last 12 months. Now that seems like a lot, but if you examine the types of people that are being let go within that cohort, generally speaking, it isn't heavily, it's disproportionately not software engineers. So what's been let go, if you like, the other peripheral functions, marketing, HR, some sales, and of course recruiting. That those are the functions that are basically being hammered. So I can understand how developers might feel differently, because even though redundancies occurred within business, they generally haven't been affected. Anyway, let's bring on some of our developer friends and we'll figure out what it is. Now, there's lots of our mates out there, so we're gonna have to do it, I think, in like ice hockey style, in and out lines. So right now, in the start, I'm going to try and bring in the developer friends I know that are more on the contract side. So these are the people that generally don't work permanently, but they work contract to contract, and they, what is that market looking like? What's the liquidity looking like in there? So let's see whether we can get some of these guys on board. So we'll go. I think Ollie's here. Did I see Ollie? I did. There's only one Ollie. It's got to be him. Let's try Tank.
That's interesting, because contracting is also one of the first to be affected when the things really go different on the market, right?
That's what you would. That's what you should imagine, because when cuts are happening, the easiest people to cut are actually people that are not on the payroll, and maybe they're always the invisible redundancies, because you wouldn't announce that. You wouldn't announce it into the crowd if you just got rid of your contractors. You just do it. So there. Anyway, let's do some intros. There's Ollie. Ollie, good to see you. Can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Hello, Hung. Good to see you too. Yes, I work as a data science, data engineering contractor, mostly with VC-backed startups.
Fantastic stuff. We see Tank there looking actually quite clean for once. So Tank, good to see you. Can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do? You're on mute, by the way.
Hi, I'm Tank. I'm a front-end developer. Spent 12 years in London in all sorts of situations, and now I'm in Barcelona, but you cannot see the sunshine because I'm in a room with no windows. So yeah.
There he is. And by the way, Tank has just arrived in Barcelona. So if you're in Barcelona and you wanna say hello and make a friend, go and reach out to Tank. He's a great dude. Okay, and we have Simon Hammond there as well. Simon, we had lunch yesterday, so great to see you. Can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Yeah, I'm Simon Hammond. I'm a freelance data scientist, mainly working in the recruitment sector. I've been working in the recruitment sector kind of for 10 years, so I have kind of an in-depth thing. Just contracting, doing it quite lightly at the moment because I'm kind of digital nomading as well. So I'm kind of trying to balance the kind of whole life work thing as well, but having fun and exploring AI again.
Fantastic stuff. Okay, so just hearing from Ala's perspective, the conversations, the recruiters are all panicking, right? Recruiters are all thinking, oh my goodness, the world has fallen in. And according to her husband and the sort of the people that she's kind of listed, the community she's listening to, it seems that developers are generally still quite calm. Is that your sense of the thing? Having just spoke to your mates about what it's looking like and what have you, when you're talking to your friends about what the labor market's like, what's generally the sentiment? Your thoughts on this? How about we go with you first, Ollie?
Hey, sure. I would say I partly look at sentiment, but I look at data, as you might imagine, and I can share a few data points with you, which are the ones that I'm looking at, which is where my thinking is coming from. So the big one, I think there's been a huge downturn in the amount of VC investment. There's a report from Bain that came out March 2nd, said that there's been a drop globally from 200 billion to 100 billion, that's absolutely massive, isn't it? It's a 50% drop. However, if you look back over the years before that, that just takes us back to where we were in 2020. So a different way of thinking about this. Yes, we are dropping, but we're just going back to what we had roughly pre-pandemic. And I see the same trend if I look at other data sources. So the other big one I use, the venerable IT Jobs Watch, which I imagine you and your audience know. If you look on there for software engineering and data engineering, two of the top titles, two that are very relevant for me, you can, it's got all these filters on it. You can look at the last 6 months, this year, last year, year before. You see a very similar pattern. The number of vacancies now in the last 6 months is pretty much the same as it was the year before last. Last year, it was huge, loads of money around, that huge amount of VC investment, these really big numbers. So when I look at those two, the total investment going in and then how that's playing out in terms of recruitment, I feel okay. Yes, it's a big drop, but it only seems to be taking us back to what was quite a nice market to begin with.
Yeah, very, very good analysis, Ollie. So what you're saying from the analysis you've seen, you've looked at, is essentially that last year was just a bizarrely plus year in the sense that it caused all of our expectations to elevate. And of course, that's course corrected really quite sharply back. But if we just recall a year before, or even that little period beforehand, it's kind of settled to a normal state as it was. How has that influenced your approach to, or has it at all? I mean, how has this research affected your behavior as a individual that looks for contracts?
Well, it's reassuring to see that, because of course it's unsettling to get less emails coming in and to see less activity. And, you know, on a personal level, I am seeing less activity, but I don't want to take that signal as all there is. I want to try and put it in context. So putting it in context like this really helps. And that's one reason I feel calm. But then the other thing, a bit more locally, we're in a quiet time of year. The new financial year begins early April for most companies. So typically, as a contractor, there just aren't nearly as many contracts going between, say, December and April. So it's a quieter year than last year. We're at pretty much the quietest time of the year. 31st of March, we're just before the new financial year starts. So I am seeing less activity in my inbox compared to last year, but you know, I don't see a bigger reason to be too concerned about that. That seems ordinary given the situation we're in.
There you go, folks. A very mature way to address the alarmism in the world. Do some research, check out what the context is, make a cup of tea, be very happy with yourself. Oh, by the way, Ollie's kind of let slip there. He was actually monitoring in-mail activity. So, hey, what does that tell you? Recruiters, don't hesitate sending in-mails. You know, developers actually might like this, even though they never respond. It's a signal of interest. Okay, let's go to you, Tank. Tank, I hope you don't mind me saying, but obviously, you know, we're friends, and I'm aware of your situation recently, moving to different places and also looking for work also. What can you give us some commentary as to your own experience as to what the job market has been like over the last, 3-4 weeks, I guess, the last time you've been looking for work? Has there been more calls? Has there been greater scrutiny from employers? Or has it just generally been as it was? I mean, have you just floated through? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's pretty hard for me to say because I have a tendency of not doing very well when I walk through the front door. Part because I'm weird and part because I'm terrible at interviewing. So I always end up finding like jobs through my network and people I worked with. And so, it's been similar to other times. And also I tend to leave a full-time employment in the middle of a crisis. I like to respond to chaos with chaos and to order with chaos as well. So yeah, I left my job and then I panicked for a few weeks and it seemed like not much was happening. Then I went through my network and I got a job. So it's very hard for me to say. It looks like there's a lot out there still, lots of small companies, which is what interests me. Those small things, but it's not. I think. In 2014-15, there was like a lot more interesting things to go around, and generally the offering, especially in London, probably became a bit less interesting. That's the only difference I can see. But from the layoffs, I don't know. I'm not interested in large companies.
No, but I get it, Tank. What's interesting there is, I mean, I do think that people's senses of is important. I mean, I take Ollie's point that of course you should do some analysis, but at the same time, just the feeling is important. And it's interesting to say that, the way in which a lot of developers do get work is through the informal networks. It's not necessarily a published job. It's you just have a chat, drop a message in, say, hey, listen, I'm looking. Suddenly certain messages start coming into your inbox that are not from recruiters, but are from hiring managers, from founders, from other developers, etc. And then through that dialogue, you're able to move it further forward. I love, by the way, that Ivan defaults to caps lock when he's on chat. It could just be shouting all the time. I don't know, but it's
but it does the same in real life, doesn't it?
That's it. I think it's the same. No, but it basically, from what I'm getting from you, Tang, is that informal network is still robust and it's still translating into opportunity, which you've converted. And it's almost like that. Like a guerrilla supply chain that's out there that isn't visible to the mass media, but it's still a very, very powerful way in which people get work. So very interesting too. Go ahead.
I want to say though as well that most of the small companies I talk to, they got funded right before the apocalypse. So in the same way, you still see so much just insane money to go around in, I don't know, Web 3.0 portfolio companies, which does like 100 of the same products, presenting your NFTs and, the salaries in crypto are insane. But I think that's also due to just leftover money from previous rounds. Like this will sort of be more stable. In a few months, we'll see basically when all the money is spent, whether it keeps going this strong,
That's a good point. Like, what is the runway? So when money gets invested, there is a surge of hiring. In fact, I think I met all of you during sort of the post-funding type of stage of startups. So that experience, I think, is still there. However, that money doesn't just disappear immediately. There's still a run rate, and of course, people are being more parsimonious. But in large part, that funding is still about recruiting, and it's still about recruiting engineers. It's categorized into product building or R&D, but it's a human being that they're bringing in to do that. So yeah, good point. Maybe 5 million quid doesn't disappear within a year. It needs to have a time before it actually goes and disappears. Okay, let's go to you, Sai. You've been floating around, as you mentioned, as of course I know. But you've been what have you been seeing? Give us an update on how that inbox is. It still getting hammered, or is it a bit quieter? What's going on?
I don't know. I've got the filters set up pretty effectively, but my approach is I like Tang says, I kind of lean towards the social network as well to kind of act as a filter. I think I kind of got to something I've learned maybe as I get older and I get crankier is that I get more picky about the people that I work with. So I kind of want to work with the people that I like working with. And so the social network is kind of good for that. Also, I think just in terms of, obviously there's some seismic changes happening in the industry at the moment and it's still shaking out. There's still the consequences of people working through COVID and reevaluating the stuff that they want to work on, and what is going to be the effect of AI. At the moment, the whole GTP thing is something that people are adjusting to, working out how their job is going to be working. Probably they're already using it as part of their job, and so just becoming proficient in that is a career move in itself. So that's kind of my focus. But yeah, I think the interest is still there, but it also depends on how visible you make yourselves, and I really don't make myself very visible. So I am the crappiest self-promoter out there.
But I think that's generally true for most devs, though, and I hope people don't take that inoffensively. But it's kind of unusual for a developer to particularly be good as a promoter or a self-promoter. I think there's a value clash there. You can do it in community, so to speak, by doing a lot on open source and GitHub and those types of places. But then it's more like developers just like say giving praise to developers, and it needs to escape into the different parts of the world that actually, or different parts of the industry that actually may have access to the opportunities. And yeah, probably developers could improve on that side of things. Maybe that's something that recruiters can help with, who knows? Because I think recruiters on the other side probably over promote somewhat. You know, that in itself probably is something we could tone down some to a degree. Open question to the three of you. What is the situation about money and rate and stuff like that? I think, and this is my perception, in the year where we had like 200 billion investment, the rates just went like sky high. Everyone was just getting uplift 25, 30%, even more on what they were getting previous. And in fact, people were attacking the market with that mindset to say, I'm going to make hay while the sun shines. Now, are you seeing that developers have maintained the 2021 ceiling in terms of what they were expecting to get and what they were getting? Or are we compromising a little bit and recognizing actually world's changed, we're back to 2020 or even earlier, we're going to bring back down our expectations in terms of the contract rate or perm salary? Open question, anybody? What are your thoughts?
I mean, I have very, very small sample size, but I've seen rates pretty much stay high, if not even incrementally increase. But maybe that's just the area I work in and the connections I have.
Yep. So you're not seeing any like sense that, let's say you're on 100 units a year ago and now someone's asking you to take 80 units. You're not seeing that. It's still at a high number.
Yeah, I mean, this is just my own negotiations, and often that's just with repeat clients just coming back with slightly different projects. So maybe the trust is an element in there as well.
Yep, interesting. How about you guys? What are your thoughts, Ollie and Tang? Where we're at money wise? Have we maintained the heights, or we as kind of post peak and start trending down?
I've seen rates stay about the same level. It's tricky, and like you're saying, Si, there's a small sample size here. There's always been people who've offered lower rates. I saw a contract offered the other day for £250 a day for data engineering, which just in any market, I'm not sure when that was ever a good rate that someone would consider. So it's hard to know, though. I'm not seeing so many that I could tell you there was a trend one way or the other, but I am seeing a good enough amount which are maintaining the levels from last year.
Yep. So maybe the volume of opportunities naturally decreased somewhat, but it hasn't necessarily, at this point, at least, not affected the rate. By the way, it is very hard for employers to push it down, by the way, because there's strong resistance from companies and from candidates, of course, to maintain what they think that they're worth. So that's a very difficult thing for employers to do. So it doesn't surprise me we're hearing that. Tank, have you got any observations to share on the rate and the salary side of it?
Well, yeah, again, it's not, I don't have visibility over everything. Not a lot, but surely if they didn't go up 15%, then they effectively decreased because your money is worth that much less now.
Yeah, that's what Alex is saying as well. It's basically inflation is perhaps a significant calculation, right? So cost of living crisis, everyone needs to buy a bell pepper to make their salad, right? That thing is now costing more than £1. Like what's going on? So yeah, I bought 6 eggs, cost £3.50. Like what's going on? So all these things happen. Therefore, and this has happened in the last 12 months, we had record inflation, cost of living crisis. Therefore, it's almost like a suboptimal time for employers to try and pressure wages down and deflate it because basically the cost of everything has increased. Okay, listen, we're going to get some other folks on the screen. Before I let you three go, let's touch on where we're at with generative AI and how that's impacted the job search on the candidate side and how it's impacted things on the recruiter side. Have you seen recruiters use any generative content at you? If they have, how do you know? Have you used any sort of generative AI to help you get into jobs or to increase your visibility or whatever? Again, open question to everybody here.
I think I've seen one maybe LinkedIn post that looks like it first draft may have come from generative AI. I think there's always, I think we're developing a sense of what it sort of smells like. If it's been generated, it's got a very sort of generic, rounded sense that seems a little bit too perfect almost, and it's the quirkiness that makes it authentic. But I'm still waiting to see like an outreach email that actually cites things from my profile as part of the outreach, rather than just being, "You've got great experience, can we talk?" kind of email.
You should not have said that. You should not have said that in a live stream watched by hundreds of recruiters, Si.
I expect my inbox now to explode with semi-custom automated emails.
So if anybody can see Si's email, go get it. No, but yeah, very interesting. So you're saying no. How about you two? Have you seen any evidence that recruiters are using generative AI in terms of outreach or anything like that?
I would say, I mean, generative AI, this is an incredible moment in time, isn't it? I've had ChatGPT open in a tab almost every day since it appeared, and I use it almost every day for many different things. I think one thing it's done for me, even before ChatGPT, there was a certain kind of interaction with people which was just quite transactional, and that's okay. But I didn't always have the bandwidth to respond to all of that in a reasonably personal way. So, you know, we've always had things like macros that we could use, and I have like some kind of copy paste templates, which I'll admit I've used replying to those emails sometimes. And now I can do something a bit more tailored than that. So I will throw into ChatGPT sections from my LinkedIn profile, from my CV, an email message or a job ad, and say, you know, please write a response to this, and then I'll tailor it from there. And I can send back a better reply than I had the capacity to do beforehand. It would have been something a bit quicker, a bit more off the cuff, a bit less tailored. So I think, you know, maybe reading between the lines a little here, yes, maybe there's a risk that we're all going to get a lot more messages which are less personal. But I think we had a lot of those anyway before. And actually, I would argue the other way. I think it's letting me be a bit more personal and connect with people more fully in those transactional situations than I used to be able to.
Yeah, very, very good, Ollie, and quite right. It's the speed of getting like certain emails deserve a long response. It'd be like rude to just give a very short response. Those are the emails that you never actually ever reply to because you want to respond to it. You want to have the time. You save it, and of course, another day goes by, it doesn't happen. You forget about it, and you've done even the worst thing ever. So by simply failing to respond. So I think maybe ChatGPT can help you there. Okay, great. Tank, on your side, any investigation? I mean, a no's an okay answer, but what are your thoughts? Have you encountered anything that you smell out as saying, okay, that looks like it's pretty much artificially generated? Have you used any yourself, or do you intend to use any?
Well, I have imagined that all recruiter emails were generated for years. For me, I don't know. I don't want to use a tool like that. It's gonna make me look more eloquent and sociable, and I always think that's a red flag from a developer. But I've used GPT-3, the Da Vinci for some apps I'm working on. It's pretty amazing. But it's interesting how people are integrating it, you know, in their day-to-day, just the UI of it. But I'd rather go through the API and make things that scale with it.
Yeah, listen, it's going to be a very exciting moment. I know developers are as excited as anybody else, obviously, with this technology. I'm interested to see how it will interact with the relationship that we have with developers, because I think it will be quite profound. I do believe recruiters will use it very aggressively because there's a need to try and get developers interested in their messaging. But I think developers also might respond with a countermeasure and to try and like as a filter away. So yeah, it's going to be fascinating to observe. Okay, listen, we're really sprinting through this, so let's
is
go ahead.
It possible? Yeah, sorry, I just want to really use this opportunity to ask the question. So all of you mentioned that you return to the network to find the job, or like if you open to it. What do you mean by network? Is it like your friends, developers in other companies? Is it recruiter that you know? Like, where is it, this network? I want to be part of it. So that's why I'm very curious. Like, where is that you look into when you're looking for a job?
I can speak to that. It's people I trust. And yeah, that's recruiters, that's engineers I've worked with That's hiring managers. Anyone can fall into that category. And I think, like, how do you build trust with me as a recruiter? And, you know, I really appreciate the strain recruiters are under and the limits and the challenges at your end, dealing with hiring managers who might not be clear what they want, might be changing things on you. I'm very understanding of that. But the more you can be upfront with me about the things that are important to me, and it's always the same things. I'm interested in what is the rate, what is the type of opportunity, if it's contract or not. So I often get those two kind of mixed up. I'm interested in what I'll be working with and what the project involves. So the more someone can say about that, or even if someone can say, I don't have those details yet, you know, I'm hoping to get them later, but you're being real with me and you're winning trust with me, and you do that a few times, then you're in. It's that simple, really.
Yeah,
I want to aim.
No,
thank you.
what I'm hearing there from you, Ollie, is so it's pretty much an informal network. We're not talking about a particular place. It's just a bunch of people you trust. And I guess everyone has that. I think everyone has that group, but perhaps at varying levels of organization, right? So have you got to the point, for instance, of putting your friends into a CRM? Is that weird to do? You know?
Yeah, yes, I think it is.
The look of disgust on Tank's face there.
Jesus.
But hey, listen, I think this is going to happen. This is where AI is going to help. You're going to end up ranking people and say, hey, who are the top 100 people I interact with in high sentiment and, you know, lots of emojis? Oh, it's these people.
No one else was thinking that. No one else was about to do that.
This is a recruitment show, man. All recruiters think this way. Okay, listen, we have to let you go. Guys, really nice to see you all. Let's catch up in a different manner. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. Have a good day, Tank, Ollie, and Sai.
Thank you, Han. Thank you,
You guys. Take care. Bye now.
Interesting. Thank you for the answers. It's really, really, really great to know where developers go when they're looking for a job. Not definitely to the random recruiter. So that's for sure.
No, but the trust networks, right? So if you have a high trust network, or, you know, you've built some relationships with people, this should be what recruiters are good at. Then that's where you're still going to get that intelligence that no one else is going to get. Folks, we always do this, by the way, in the middle of every show, even though we're coming to the end, towards the sort of end third of it. We are going to take the opportunity to connect with as many of us as possible, because we have to come off air at some point, folks. But it's obviously this is a conversation that needs to continue. We want to make sure that Brainfood Live is a conversation starting topic, not a conversation ending one. So what I need you all to do is to take a moment, grab your LinkedIn URL and just share it into the chat stream if you're watching this on Crowdcast, and then connect with everyone who has done that. Worst case scenario is that you're going to end up having listened to this show and participated in this show, and you've walked away with 20, 30 excellent contacts with whom you could continue having that conversation. If you're watching this on LinkedIn, please do the same. Grab your LinkedIn URL, share it as a comment within the LinkedIn thread, and then to connect with everyone who's done the same. Why not have a stronger network? In fact, one of the things that we should all spend a bit of time working on is improving the quality and depth of the network that we have. Because if the external environment is in any way looking ambiguous or strange, the stronger a network you have, the better it's going to be. Trust me, it's going to increase your increase your kind of opportunity surface area, if I can use that term. Right, let's get on with it. We're going to bring on some more guests. Who have we got? We're going to bring on Alexei. Let's bring on Alexei here. Ivan, you're coming on here as well. And of course, we're going to bring on Fabrizio. I can see Fabrizio there. So let's have a look at this from another perspective. Maybe we can look more on the permanent side, but we'll see.
Hey.
Cool. We have Alexei. How are you doing, Alexei? Good to see you.
Hello, I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm very well. Alex, can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do, sir?
Yeah, hey, I'm Alex. I'm based in Amsterdam, and I'm working for a small startup now. Basically, the startup is headquartered in Berlin, and we are doing some fintech stuff. I'm the head of API there. And before that, I was working for a payment giant here for 6 years, so I have some relevant experience that I can work in the industry.
Fantastic. And we have Ivan here as well. Ivan, great to see you, sir. Can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
So I'm based in Switzerland, and I do tech recruitment for 8 years now. And before that, I've been a developer, but I love the freedom of running an agency more than coding and being employed. So this is what I do right now. We also build recruiting tools, and yeah, happy to be here.
Great stuff, and nice to see you as well, Fabrizio. Fab, can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Nice to see you. Based in London. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, based in London. I'm part of a company that's just over 200 employees. We have been hiring crazy in the last year, and I've been part of most of this conversation about hiring because I'm chief engineering. So I'm involved in all the hiring, and we're still strong going for hiring, despite what has been said before. So for us, has been quite a good time to hire because a lot of candidates are available.
Yep, fantastic stuff. Let's go straight there, folks. We were speaking to the previous group of guys. They were all focused on contract market, contractors as well. Let's focus for our side on the full-time employment side. What are we seeing from, let's say, the hiring point of view? So actually, Fab, you kicked this off there. You're operating as the most senior tech person in the company. So you're involved in hiring software engineers and have been for the last 12 months. How would you assess the labor market for software developers over the past 12 months?
The biggest problem is always that there's a lot of unqualified people that tends to think they are qualified. That's still the biggest problem. But because we operate in 19 countries, including Brazil, I think that gives us a good space, a good edge to hire. We recently hired actually 3 people in Brazil, and out of 20 interview I did, majority in Brazil. So I think that has been a market made available to us because of the layoff in US, I think. Also, we had, for other reason, we had to deal with the Ukrainian war in our company because we started 2020 with 50 people in Ukraine, and now because the asylum acceptance in Canada, US, and other countries, they're relocating, so they're moving on with their lives. So both sides. So we lost talents and we gained talents for other reason. However, it personally doesn't feel like the layoff had a negative impact in the market, and the people we don't have any hire. We never had any hire from the big tech company, and to be frank, the level of people that we are, maybe they were not considering going for those jobs, but if I have to judge for what I see, we are a little bit better off than last year in terms of the quality of vacancy that comes in.
Yeah. That's very interesting because when you have sort of reached one of these premium employers, you've worked for Facebook, like the compensation has been historically so high. There's only certain types of companies that you would ever consider going to, and it would be a Google or it would be, a company of similar size and scale. So there's an argument to say that these people who might be leaving those companies may not be able to achieve an equivalent job in the current marketplace. Therefore, they're not actually effectively contributing to the candidate pool. But in fact, what they may be doing is setting up their own businesses, launching their own startups. I absolutely assume there'll be loads of developers. If you're earning, 300, 400K a year or whatever as a software engineer, you're coming into the market, you're not going to accept 200. You're going to say, screw it. I'm going to set up my own thing and see what I can do. So I think those people don't contribute to the market. There won't be the sort of sense of dispersal into the wider market. But what might happen is that companies that are not in those big elite tiers might become more competitive and be able to capture attention of developers a little bit more easily because the volume of vacancies has decreased, even though the volume of candidates hasn't decreased. That's just me spitballing the idea out there. Alex, go to you on this. You're in the Dutch market, maybe in the German market also. And you mentioned as a senior guy in the team, you've been looking at candidates as well. How have you looked? How has the market changed for you guys with regards to permanent hiring over the last 12 months?
Yeah, it's definitely changing, and you made very good points. Basically, there are more people with experience and qualities who worked in big tech before. So basically now they're they're spreading this knowledge and expertise to other companies, from tiers below, or they start their own businesses. And this is actually good, because then I think this helps all these other companies to grow and build more comprehensive technology and become more competitive as well. So in that sense, they fill in the roles and that in the past they wouldn't probably consider, and this is good. But then this means that there are less open positions for other people, maybe less experience. So there is also a little bit of tension there. At the same time, it's much harder now to convince people to move from some established companies, because they don't want to risk their position, especially if we want to invite to a startup. So basically, it's for many of them, it's high risk. So if they feel that the current position offers them a lot of security, they just prefer to stay. So, and it just varies, I would say, depending on the market. And of course, in Europe, it's much more stable than in the US, at least what I see from the numbers.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Ivan, go to you on this. I guess you've always had that a situation where obviously you're working full-time on the recruiter side, but you do, I think, have very much a developer mentality. You've never lost your connection with the community there. In your conversations with software engineers, what sense are you getting about their confidence in the market? Are they feeling any kind of is it different in any sensible way that you can see over the last 12 months?
I mean, the situation, I would say, is a bit different than it was before. You get people who were making 250,000 at Google Zurich, which is the biggest development Google office outside the US. And these people suddenly are okay to work for essentially half. And they are totally relaxed in the call, in the sense of I tell them the numbers that they can expect. And they are willing to have the conversation and have the interviews, right? So, I mean, these are people who were laid off, obviously. And before the layoffs, I also talked to, big tech people who were scared to be laid off. So, the feeling that big companies are safe, I feel here is less so, right? I a little bit see people actually going to government jobs, government-funded universities or similar, where really you can say, okay, they have another mentality, right? So first they have the money, because it's the government. They have they, I guess, print it, I don't know. And they have the mentality which is okay, we hire one person and then it's good, and not we hire 30 people. And then if the venture capitalists say, stop spending money, we fire 10 people, right? So I would say some companies that are, let's say, below 200 people, they were in the, let's say, in a bad situation the last 10 years. They lost always talent to big tech, to cool, hip startups. And now I really tell them, hey, I know you have a little bit maybe of a boring product and a little bit not maybe the newest stack, but you are very attractive now, because you are the ones who are not firing. You're the ones who actually keep their promises, which was always, hey, we hire you and then we keep you forever, we'll not let you go. And this value proposition was unattractive in the last 10 years, because hey, there's this other company where you get free everything and giant salary and blah, blah. And now you're let go. So sad. But these companies that are more traditional, I work with them much more than before, actually. So my startup clients, they're really mostly on hold. They really said, we would like to hire someone, but the investors say we stop everything. And I'm focusing more on traditional job profiles, traditional companies. In the last 12 months, it has been also for me a complete transition. So it was a paradise fantasy world in the last decade, I would say. So now we come back to reality.
Yeah, very, very interesting assessment, Ivan, and very interesting to kind of get a gauge as to what the value proposition is of the type of employer. I think you're absolutely right. 5 years or so ago, getting a government job was definitely not something most developers would be imagining as an ambition. I mean, maybe if a government was doing something spectacularly advanced, but we all know that that's generally not going to be the case. But perhaps it becomes like more attractive now for the security aspect. Plus, also, I think the startup, the equities, the value of equities, I think has been diminished in the minds of people, because we've seen obviously companies collapse after raising like zillions. 3 months later, actually, the company's gone under. Then all of those things kind of would damage the concept of, oh, by the way, here's the salary, but here's your real comp is all these shares that actually may not be worth much. So perhaps developers are also changing their view on that. What are your thoughts on this concept? Have different types of employer become a little bit more prominent, and is it now their time to really get aggressive in hiring developers there? What are your thoughts? Ala, feel free to contribute your thoughts on this one. Has there been an equalization as to what's cool, I guess?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm listening what the developers are sharing, and also the conversation that we have in the chat. It definitely looks like there is more risk to go to the companies with the big names and the companies that are in the layoffs list. That's for sure. But at the same time, a lot of companies that would like to hire these talents, they can't afford it. So some people are okay to lower the standards, but a lot of people, they go, I don't know, like mortgage, they have some credits, they have families and this kind of thing. So it's still a challenge for the other companies to grab this talent to get them on board. Another thing that I also noticed that remote was always a huge advantage for software engineers, I think. And what is happening right now as well is that people, the companies who were predominantly hiring for remote, they're getting much more candidates right now willing to reduce the salary, but stay connected with the company in the remote side, and maybe having in 1 year the permanent contract that gives some guarantees. That's what I saw on the market.
That's interesting. Let's talk about remote a little bit. Fabrizio, you're saying remote's really helped your business because it's helped you tap into different markets, particularly into, let's say, the Brazilian market, which maybe under tapped, which is great stuff. But we're also hearing about companies starting to say come back to the office, and some of these are led by these big tech companies. Has the sense how resistant are developers towards going back to the office, guys? What are your thoughts on this? Are they considering it, or is it still, hey, listen, don't talk to me unless I can have remote anywhere?
If I can answer,
yeah, sure.
I think remote is a benefit that majority developer wants. I couldn't fathom any of my developers that will do otherwise. It has been helping us immensely, because without that we would have limited to central London, because the investor was a big promoter of the in-office culture, and primarily for lack of trust in their culture of the investors. I think you really need to try. You need to have a company with a high level of trust, and high level of trust goes both ways. So if there's not more trust, there's only one way that you're gone. So there's no, you need to play that. You need to know you have I trust. You work in Brazil, you work in Ukraine, and tomorrow in Portugal, and we don't care. We have a guy that travels. We didn't even know. We started from Italy and being Italian, then was in Peru, and then was in Thailand, and the quality keep on arriving. The team is keep on happy, and for us is all good. But we know there's a trust point. You start not showing up, or you start not playing by the rules, you're out. I think that to us delivered more than an office culture, but at the same time, we don't have managers. So we have all our leader, they do code, and that was a choice of the structure for proving they can lead a team. They need to be able to help people in difficulties. So we don't have a single manager in that regards. Everyone that has live management responsibility is actually splitting their time in 50-50 or maybe more into doing the core activity, whether that is coding or whether that is core QA or anything. So maybe not by not having manager, there's much more trust, and you can have the remote culture working. If you don't have that, maybe you want to see people and engage and monitor. I don't know, but for us, it's working great.
You've introduced some controversy here, Fabrizio, which is exactly your personality, by the way. It's why you're good value on on these types of exercises. But you're talking about the management tier actually affects whether the remote is a viable solution. Because if you're management heavy, probably, well, what is the role of a manager? You're managing performance, quote unquote, and it's actually extremely difficult to do that if you are asynchronous from people. It's inherently a synchronous role. So I wonder whether we're kind of developing a kind of a more nuanced understanding as to what works most in remote organizations, and that's essentially a management light culture where most people are still operators in a significant degree. So that's a topic for another time, because we don't have sort of huge amount of time to talk about it. But let's move on to you, Ivan. Remote, how high is the demand for this? We talked about there's more flexibility in salary. Is there now a little bit more, okay, great, I'll come into the office type of attitude?
Yeah, so like I would say 10% of people would really say, hey, 5 days again in the office, no problem, I can focus more. 40% say, yeah, 2-3 days is fine, or like maybe 1 day or something like that. And then or like 40% would say maybe 1 day it's best, so I see people, and like almost the other half would be like, yeah, 3 days max and stuff like that. So it's like really people like are very different, right? And it's good that this is recorded because I have a prediction a little bit. So if there will be like a giant crisis, really like 2008 type of thing, I think especially these people who live like 1 hour from London type of thing, they will come more often in, because at the end of the day, the employer, they pay the money and they say, okay, show up. Yeah. And I see many Swiss companies still sticking to that. They still say, okay, I mean, we prefer that you are here 4 days a week, right? And they didn't change a lot. Yeah, they had the COVID thing mandated by the government. They did everything, but now it's kind of back, right? And I mean, all the big names who are like, hey, you come like 5 days, Elon Musk and all these people. I mean, they're not dumb people, right? Yeah, I mean, because now we still live in like a good world, right? There's still like the stock market is like, okay, like there's food in the supermarket. So if something really bad happens, then like it might get back again. And then long term, it might be something between what we have now and fully come back 5 days in a week. So I think in 10 years, we'll look back and maybe see the current situation somewhat of a like special case. I don't know. Maybe this is my gut feel, just
Yeah, very interesting. I think what are your thoughts on where we're going to go with remote?
I hope it's going to be different. I'm listening and I'm like, oh no.
I'm just telling the reality. Like I see the reality. I just tell it how it is. I don't want to like make up stuff that I don't see. So I just say what I see.
Good, it's recorded, as you're saying. So I hope that your prediction is absolutely like not going to be the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, someone on LinkedIn has just said, "Look, I'm in the office 60%. I love it." I think basically some people are going to be very happy to be back in the office, particularly younger people. I think who we all know this already. Early entry people definitely suit office more. but it's people that have kind of become individual contributors and maybe have got enough to kind of configure their own home environment in a way that satisfies them. That becomes difficult to leave once you've created that situation. And of course, for parents with young kids, I think in most cases, being sort of more proximate with their family is useful. Getting away from dropping kids on and off and causing that type of scenario, obviously difficult. We're nearly over time a little bit, but I want to talk about younger developers. So far, we've talked about experience, both on the contract side. Typically, that's 2-3 years in before you even think about that. Here, we're talking about experience also. Does the market look different to younger developers, people who just come on, no experience, maybe just out of university, maybe career changes in a boot camp have come through? Has the current market been particularly harsh to that category of candidate? Ali, you're nodding your head there. Why don't we go to you first? What are your opinions on this?
It's just like, yeah, it's something that I have noticed recently in the maybe last 3 months. I'm receiving like on a daily basis messages from the junior engineers. It was not that often before. And so most of them like, hey, I'm junior. I trouble to find any jobs. There are all the postings as senior. And I really like, I was curious. I opened like LinkedIn and I posted like the junior jobs and I just saw like 3 in Amsterdam, something like that, for the software engineers. So basically, as we also try to discuss it in the chat here, that's junior software engineers, they compete with people who were laid off with a few years of experience, or the senior software engineers, and there is a little bit of less trust from hiring managers for people who are freshly graduates from the courses. So online courses for developers are not that valued as you compare with the fresh graduates from the university. And this is the argument that is also like, if you're a junior, if you just finished the course, to find the job for you is going to be like a huge challenge. If you graduate from the university, maybe you will get the internship or something like that, but still, if the company is hiring. But the market for juniors, I think, is the harshest ever. It's just what I see.
No, well, that's important, and it's interesting to know because maybe because what I'm reading from this and this entire conversation is that the entire market is not going to treat everyone the same way. It's going to vary per region. It's going to vary per level. It's going to be very contract type and so on. And I can totally have my sympathies with this. Just go to you and your thoughts on this, Fabrizio. What about? Do you think the market is harder? Particularly harder now for people who have got light experience? What are your thoughts?
It's a very difficult question. In one end, I would say yes. In one end, I would say no. I have personal experience where I know two people have been hired by a friend of mine with his own startup, recently funded and launched. He hired 2 people out of uni. They are extremely good. He's extremely happy. They are fairly cheap. So that's a happy story. On the other end, we don't hire juniors. We only had 2 from a program in Madagascar, which have been selected by a company in Madagascar, which provides bed and IT infrastructure for them and training. It looks like training because they hit the ground running. But apart from that, my company, we are such a heavy building phase rather than business as usual that we can't hire this position because there will be not enough easy tasks for them to do. It also depends on the budget of the company, and as per the conversation that we had before as well, for the remote working, some company like us, we let go 2 huge offices, one in central Kiev, one in central London, because of budget. So there's no more office to go back to. So that will be another point. And the same budget will impact the decision that you do, because if you have less of a budget, you have to choose, do I hire a person that gives me more guarantee that the task is going to get done, or I use the same to hire 2 or 3 or 2 mid or 3 juniors? Maybe I don't know, different CEOs thinks differently. It depends really on whether we have more companies that are looking to people as junior developer to train in order to make an investment for the future, or if we have more of interest of succeeding as early as possible because that's the pressure of the industry you're in. That is what will make it. But regardless, I think there's an enormous need for people in tech, enormous, and that also extends to project manager, designers. So it's very vast amount of roles, but I don't see that stopping anytime soon. So in a sense, there's more opportunity. It just might not be on the famous companies, might not be on, but there are opportunities for people that can qualify to get it. For example, we have the same test. Before we were talking about test, we have the same test for any level. You submit the test and we evaluate what you've done. I don't usually go and look at a CV to know that somebody is junior, senior. I go and look at the test that has been provided. Somebody refused to do a test, and then we know the answer. It made our life easy. But there are people that we have hired in the past that they thought they were almost not qualified for a job, and they did very well in the test, and we took them on board, and now they prove themselves valuable. It really depends on the individuals. Something true is that you might not see advertised looking for junior developer. That's true, I think, but I'm not sure that is because people don't want to hire inexperienced people, or just because I don't know. I don't know why is that, but there's need for people.
Yeah, I'll hazard a guess. By the way, we're running way over time, so we have to cut this short. But I'll hazard a guess. Basically, most companies, when they're recruiting, if they're a smallish business, they're going to have a lot of recruiting is crisis-driven. Someone has left. There's a problem here. Someone's told them we need to build this real quick. And therefore, it's not a strategic decision per se. It's like, I need a fix here. And that's typically someone with experience ready to go. That's classic scenario. This is the same in recruiting, by the way. You know, if we're recruiting recruiters, very rarely do you say, oh, let's have a junior recruiter. Everyone says, give me 5 years experience and we'll pay extra because you don't have the time or bandwidth, or you feel you don't have time and bandwidth to do the training. It's only those bigger organizations that have a strategic hiring plan that can say, you know what, we have to think 5-10 years down the line and grow the talent internally. That's how we kind of compete. And those organizations tend to be of a different scale. Okay, listen, we have to close it off here, folks, because we are well over time. I just want to thank everyone for joining. Thank you, Fabrizio. Thank you, Ivan. I also want to we'll say goodbye to you guys here. I also want to say sorry for people who are arriving a bit late. Not related at all. You were on time, but apparently the calendar went out to a bunch of people at 3 p.m. at BST. That's basically all time daylight savings snafu. So apologies for that. I hope that's okay. This is recorded, so you can go back and watch replay. In fact, you can press replay straight away after the show is finished, and you'll be able to watch it and replay back. So, and I'll also, of course, take the audio out of this and put it into the Recruiting Brainfood podcast. Final word to you, Ala. What are your thoughts having had that conversation? Does it kind of like comport with the chats you're having with your husband? I guess it does, doesn't it? You know.
It's it made me think about a few things. One of them is that I wanted to quickly actually ask the question in the question area to recruiters. I know there are no questions, and I decided to ask one because the thing is, like, I shared a few layoff trackers, and this is something that I was discussing with my developers friends as well. Like, there are lists of people who were laid off, right? And there are the names, their locations, their role and LinkedIn profile. And when we get this list, like, we're like, oh, okay, so there's like a low-hanging fruits, people who are open for a job. But then the developers who were laid off, they shared the experience that they were treated differently. They were treated like a second hand or like not the best candidates, because apparently they were laid off, and so they have a lot of questions from recruiters, like why, and like they felt like recruiters were very suspicious that they're really not good. That's why they were laid off. And this is actually what really bothers me. And I wanted to ask this question to recruiters who is on the show, watching the show, like, hey, it looks like you're very excited when you see the layoff list, because these are the candidates that you can reach out. But at the same time, this is probably the list of the not great people. So that's
That's a really
controversial.
good question. Yeah, really good observation. Have we not all seen those spreadsheet, folks? You know, and it's great innovation. The talent database thing. I think that first emerged during the first wave of redundancies on coronavirus when it first arrived. It was wonderful to see these like databases be produced. But perhaps recruiters have been are not taking due care, and we're saying, okay, this person's got to be desperate for work, or I'll just blast them an email. And of course, that's like really negative. Bear in mind, someone who's been made redundant. We've done a show on this before. We've done a number of shows on it already. Psychologically, you're in a really weird space. No matter how sort of mentally strong you are, wherever it is, being made redundant can be very damaging, can be very confusing. You're mourning a loss of your connections, your friends, even, and all this type of stuff. So yeah, it's a highly sensitive and emotional state. We as recruiters need to have enough EQ to recognize that. And then be able to interact with a person with the right level of respect and right level of decorum. So even though they may be, hot to trot candidates there. And by the way, recruiter's job is not to verify whether this person's like amazingly good at their job or not. There should be a technical test performed by someone who's qualified to do that, or by a platform like Code Signal that can do that for you. So I wonder why a recruiter would even think that they could ask that question per se, because what is the expected answer? Oh yeah, I'm terrible, that's why they let me go. You're never going to get that response, are you? So why do you ask the question, why were you let go? Loads of redundancies are happening. This is what's going on. So leave the assessment side really to people who qualify to do it. Our job is to identify the person, understand their motivation, get a sense as to whether they may fit, and then present the opportunity and see whether we can get them into a further conversation. Okay, that's about it. Thank you everyone for watching. It's a record long show, 80 minutes. Why not? Thank you very much for your time, Ala. Wonderful to see you.
Thank you so much.
Hopefully we'll get you back, obviously, before we catch up in person in Berlin. But yeah, I'll be in touch on that. But yeah, looking forward to doing this developers thing. I'm not sure whether I've got any tasks to perform, but yeah, I'm excited for it. It's gonna be a great conference.
It's going to be. Thank you so much, Han. Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Wasn't that great, everybody? Hope you enjoyed. Oh, by the way, I didn't even talk about last week. Next week, we're going to do Brainfood Live. However, it is Easter break. So we assume that lots of people are going to be away on Friday because it's Good Friday, and it's also a long weekend, Easter Monday. So lots of people are taking time off, which you should. Therefore, we're going to move the show to Thursday, 12 o'clock. We're going to make the kind of still it's a way in which you can finish the weekend by watching the show. We're going to be talking about how you can use generative AI in recruitment marketing. So we've got a slight change of focus with generative AI. We're going to talk to recruitment marketing people, typically from recruitment tech, see how they are using generative AI, because I think we can learn a lot from those folks in terms of outreach, content generation, tracking, all those types of things. Make sure you sign up for that. Follow the channel if you want to get notified for it. And I'll see you on Thursday next week. Thanks for watching, everybody.